Olá, boa tarde, tudo bem? Sejam bem-vindos. Meu nome é Madalena Young Smith, sou agida cultural no Consulado dos Estados Unidos, em São Paulo. Gostaria de agradecer à TV Cultura e toda a equipe pela parceria nessa iniciativa. Agradeço também nossos Arts Envoys, ou Embaixadores para as Artes, Marlies Yearby e Telly Leung. O programa Arts Envoys é desenvolvido pelo Escritório de Assuntos de Educação e Cultura do Departamento de Estado dos Estados Unidos para conectar artistas norte-americanos com artistas e audiências do mundo todo. Assim, é uma grande satisfação poder compartilhar com vocês esse aspecto tão relevante na cultura dos Estados Unidos, que é o teatro musical. As artes e a cultura têm um papel muito importante de aproximar nossos países e nossos povos. O evento de hoje é prova disso. E agora, sem mais delongas, passo a palavra para Marlies Yearby, que é ativista e artista, coreógrafa, diretora, com uma perspectiva global. Foi também indicada ao Tony Award pela choreography em inglês, desenvolvida do musical da Broadway, Rent, e recebeu o Drama League Award pela produção de Rent em Los Angeles. Marlies, over to you.
Thank you, Madalena. It is just an honor to be here and to be a part of this initiative of bringing musical theater and the connection between America and Brazil through musical theater. I love it. And I love that I'm here to talk to you artists who are dreaming of your dream and living your dream by beginning this journey along your way to making this your whole career. And it is an amazing thing when you come to that place and choose as an artist to be an artist. Sometimes it's chosen for you, and I really feel that my path was one that it was chosen for me. I felt like at one point I tried to do other things, and it became so clear to me that when I was focused and living my artistry, I was the happiest and I was the most purposeful, and it was the most transforming for both myself and for the people that I engaged. I really started off in dance, and I always also connected to theater. I sort of crossed paths and followed my heart. It's very important to follow your instinct as an artist. You must cultivate your instinct, the ability to listen from within so that you can find your path. And my path initially started off with dance when I was in California. And I started dancing with a company at that time called Bobby Wynn and Dance Company. And I choreographed on that dance company and attended San Jose State University, where I was able to take graduate study choreography courses, and then went off to start choreographing in community theater. From there, I found my way to New York City. I decided that I needed to go to New York City because where I was, there wasn't a great support for the arts and growing the arts as a career. So I wanted to go and learn more, and I went to New York City to do that. And I hooked up with a beautiful woman named Diane McIntyre, and her company, Sounds and Motions Dance Theater, worked with live music, and the body told the story. And that was how I envisioned my work, was that the body would tell the story. And so I connected with her, and on a little stipend, I moved to New York City. And boy, I tell you, sometimes I struggled. Sometimes I ate off a bag of rice, and that was the way I kept myself going. People believed in me, they believed in my craft and my work. And the more I showed it, the more I was loved for it. And so I realized that there was something important in the storytelling that I had to do. I believed that the body could tell the story in a way that would make the audience feel their own story while they're watching it. So it was very important to align myself with other collaborators who also told the story through their words, through the music, through their visuals in a way that made the audience connect and make contact with who they are and their own living stories. So I got to work with some amazing writers that may not be familiar to everyone. Lori Carlos and Robbie McCulley, Sekou Sundayata. These are people that I connected with who had a story to tell. And they started encouraging me to direct. They said, you can really direct. Your storytelling through this body really is telling the story of our words. We want you to direct our words. And so then I fell into beginning to direct those works. I formed a company called Moving Spirits Dance Theater. And I did that as a container to really bridge this collaboration. And I decided that the tagline for my company was that we built bridges of understanding between diverse populations, finding ways by which we connected. And that was really important to me. And the making of the stories that we did all had to do with connecting from that place. So then one day, after I had finished yet another production, this one was called Feathers at the Flame Next Dance. And it was all about the connection between the African American, and the Native, the indigenous people here in America. It was about that connection. And as soon as I had finished it, I gotten a call from Rent. And it was from a woman named Linda Chapman, who told me that Mark Russell from PS 122, one of the producers who held my work, recommended that I submitted my work for consideration on that production. And little did I know that submitting my company's work for Moving Spirits Dance Theater would just change everything. And they wanted to meet with me, and I met with Jonathan Larson and Michael Greif. And we sat there in a room together. And the first thing they said to me was, you know, when I looked at your work, what I saw was that the body felt so natural. It felt like it was just telling the story naturally. And then sometimes they would dance, but the transition felt like a human being dancing, not like an actor, not like a performer. And they said, can you do that for Rent? And I loved that they got me. They got me, which is the other thing I would share with you. Find the people who get you. Start yourself nurturing there, and then grow and take chances and risk to find new ways to play in art, in your artistry. And so for me, Rent was a new way to play and an old way to play, in that I was coming to it with who I am. I got to be authentic to who I am in making that work. And at the same time, I got to play in a new garden. I was meeting Michael Greif for the first time, Jonathan Larson for the first time, Paul Clay, who was the set designer at that time. He's an installation artist, more coming from the world that I hailed from. Blake, who was the lighting designer, he was coming from the club scene. So all of these collection of artists coming from all these different places. Angela Went, who was coming in as a fashion designer, who was stepping into this costume designer world. And then you had Tim Weil, who was an amazing musical director, who through the music, the way he directed the music, also told the director's story and told Jonathan's story. And this was the new pot that I got to collaborate in. And I stepped into that pot and we crossed boundaries with each other. We inspired each other. And that is the beautiful place when the actors can inspire the creatives and the creatives can inspire each other and the actors. That is the beautiful intersection of theater, and which makes it so special. And that musical theater form, when you have that live music surrounding you, and at the same time, the words that you are both singing and sometimes speaking. And in this world that we were in of Rent, The sets weren't moving and twisting. Our bodies had to tell that too. We determined how we were singing, how we were living in the body, how we were living in that dance, told us where we were in every second without large shifts of the set. So it was revolutionary. It was revolutionary in a way that hair was in its time. And it was just beautiful and amazing, because one of the things about Rent was that it needed a kind of a voice that allowed the actor to live inside of the music, the character, the thoughts in a way that was very human, not too over the top acted. And the collection of artists that gathered together were anywhere from trained more on a rock stage to street dancing trained to actors that were, their whole life was trained for these moments. And this collection of artists were able to embody that story in the most natural and amazing way. And it was also a beautiful time in that we had thousands and thousands of artists who were not union, they were not equity, they were coming for the first time, inspired by that story and taking a risk to audition. And as a result, Rent opened the door to so many artists that would have not been at that time. And the theatrical productions that followed were able to really bring, again, a collection of artistry together that was different than it had been in the past. And that was amazing and really connected to the way I believe theater should be. It should be a place where we cross boundaries, where we learn from each other and inspire each other through all our diversity. And so it felt like it was home in a way. And so here, 25 years later, the company before COVID was still touring from the 20th anniversary tour that launched. And so again, I get to see this work fly. And in the middle of all of that, I continue to run my company up until about 2006, where I took a break from it then. And I continue to make work with other writers, Shay Youngblood, Rita Dove, and artists, again, coming from a different aesthetic of theater that was as important as Rent in a different way. So I continue to love it. And now I'm developing a work that has everything to do about the passageways of food and access to food. And I'm writing. I am writing. And that is a frightening thing, but I am writing. And so I'm stepping into yet another place in my voice. And I think that that's all I have to say. I think I don't even know what else to say in this moment in time. But yes,
Muito
that
bom,
was my
Marlies.
journey. Thank
Que
you.
fantástica. Muito obrigada, Marlies. E, por favor, não esqueça de postar suas perguntas no chat, tá? Então, e agora passo a palavra para Telly Leung, que interpretou Aladdin na Broadway. Seus trabalhos na Broadway e em turnês nacionais incluem In Transit, Allegiance, Godspell, Rent, Wicked, Pacific Overtures e Flower Drum Song. Na TV, ficou também conhecido por o personagem Wes the Rabbler em o show americano Glee. Telly, over to you.
Hi, everybody. How are you? It's so wonderful to be here, and it's so wonderful to be with someone from my Rent family, Marlies, as well. Just a little bit about me. I am coming to you live from New York City. I am actually I'm a New York City native. I grew up here in Brooklyn. My parents are still in Brooklyn, and I went to high school here in New York at a math and science high school called Stuyvesant High School, which is just downtown. And my apartment that I'm living in right now, I'm actually 2 blocks away from the Nederlander Theater where Rent started. And so as a New York kid, I grew up with immigrant parents. My parents actually grew up in communist China. And then they grew up during the time of Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution. They grew up in the south of China, actually, in an area that was very, very close to Hong Kong. And with communism in China, they quickly realized, there wasn't very much opportunity for them because there was no opportunity for education. So in the 60s, they started to figure out a way to escape communism. And where they were in China was an area in the Cantonese region, and just a narrow body water away was Hong Kong, which at the time was a British Commonwealth. So both my parents actually left China to go to Hong Kong, and they swam from China to Hong Kong. It was a 7-hour swim. And that was the beginning of their journey. They got to Hong Kong. They didn't swim together. They met when they were in Hong Kong in the 70s and dating and, getting to know each other, and that they shared this journey, that they both had this journey of leaving China together from the same region. But they knew that they wanted to, get married and have a kid in America, to have all of those opportunities that they didn't have. So in the 70s, they came to New York City. New York was where they had work. In the 70s for them, an opportunity. My mom became a seamstress, and my dad started working in Chinese restaurants. They both worked in Chinatown because it was an easy place to work, because they didn't speak English very well. They would work during the day, and then they would go to night school to study English. And my dad actually learned a lot of English by listening to popular American music in the 1960s. So, in my house, was a lot of disco, a lot of Donna Summer and Saturday Night Fever, and but also some great songwriters, Simon and Garfunkel, and also early 80s rock, Journey, Air Supply. All of that was sort of the music that my dad played to learn English. My mom learned English by watching TV. And one of her favorite shows on television was a show in the 70s called Kojak. The star of that show was named Telly Leung. She loved that show. She loved that actor. And that's why I'm named Telly. I'm actually named after Telly Leung, who was a 70s actor, which is wild. She just thought it was a normal American name, like Bobby, Michael, Tom, Telly. Isn't everybody named Telly? So sometimes when people ask me where my name comes from, I say, well, go watch Kojak in the 70s. You'll know. And my having immigrant parents, being an actor was sort of not what they dreamed for me. They could only afford to have one kid. I'm an only child. So they thought I was going to go and study hard and go to Harvard and become a doctor. That's what they wanted me to do. And then marry a nice Chinese girl and have lots of Chinese grandchildren. None of those things happened in my life. They're okay with that now. But they had very different dreams for me. And here I was in New York, and I discovered theater by watching PBS, which is a public broadcasting station here in America. It's publicly funded. And they were showing a show, very much like a show like TV Cultura, but it's like a show that we call Great Performances, where they shoot live ballet performances, live operas, live Broadway shows. And when I was 8 years old, I remember watching PBS, my public television, and I saw Into the Woods for the first time. And I did not grow up in a religious home, but I felt like that day I had a religious moment as an 8-year-old. And, for me, my God was Stephen Sondheim. That's who I sort of discovered at 8 years old. And I didn't even know what I was watching. I had no idea that here I was living in Brooklyn, which is about an hour subway ride away to a live theater. I didn't know that this was happening in my city. So I think that's what began my curiosity about theater. Well, to make my parents proud, I did very well in school. I went to a math and science high school that you have to take a test to get into. I thought that my path was going to be, okay, I'm going to go to this math and science high school and study biology, go to Harvard, go to med school, become a doctor, make my parents proud. When I was in this math and science high school, and it was a big, big high school. I had a class of 700 kids in my freshman class. I remembered we would, I was surrounded by people who loved math, who loved science. And the way I would always describe it is, if there was a leaf, it's the autumn and the leaves are changing color. And if they saw a leaf falling from the tree, they would say, oh, this is the physical reaction. Gravity is pulling on this. The wind is making the leaf fall this velocity. My friends who were biochemists who loved chemistry, they go, oh, the biochemistry in this leaf is changing. That's why it's changing color. That's why. But and here I saw the leaf falling, and I said, I think I hear a song in my brain, and I want to write a poem about this leaf. So I automatically knew. I was like, I see the world differently. Not only that, but after school, I would do high school musicals. I would just get together, with my friends after school. I had a wonderful high school teacher who taught engineering at this science high school, but he volunteered his time. He didn't get paid anything extra. And after school, he would stay and he would direct the musicals. He would teach us how to build the sets, how to paint the sets. From 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, that's what he did. He dedicated his time to us, and he volunteered that time to me, to all of us. And so it was there that I sort of found my tribe. I found people that understood me. I found a family, and not just the family that I was given. Like I said, I'm an only child. I don't have brothers and sisters. But doing a show after school and making a show with people, making something from nothing, I automatically had instant family, chosen family. And I think that's at the end of the day why I said, oh my gosh, if I do theater, if I make art with other people, it's instant family. I have instant brothers and sisters. And even today, I talk about, when I talk about Rent, I talk about my Rent family. I talk about my Aladdin family. I talk about my Glee brothers. And I think that's, in a way, what I think is the power of theater, why I was drawn to theater to begin with at that age. And, they always say there's that moment where you get bit by the theater bug, or you catch the theater disease and you never get the cure from it. Like you never get the vaccine. Well, that was the moment, that I caught it. And I think I was addicted to that sense of instant family. What ended up happening was when it was time to go to college, I auditioned for performing arts colleges, but I also promised my parents that I would apply to real college, right? What they would consider, I was going to go and, be a pre-law major, a pre-med major, go to med school. So I applied to half and half schools. Half of my schools were real college. The other half were schools that I applied to that I wanted to go to. And what ended up happening was I went to a college in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called Carnegie Mellon University. There's some wonderful actors have come out of Carnegie Mellon. It's actually one of the oldest theater degrees, universities to give a degree in theater. And, the people that have gone there you might know are Billy Porter went there, Megan Hilty went there, Michael McElroy went there, Patrick Wilson, Cherry Jones, really, like it's a wonderful sort of a theater school. And what ended up happening was I applied there and I got in, and they gave me a really big scholarship to go based on my audition. So now my parents, like I said, who didn't come from very much money, and here was this college that was, giving me a big scholarship to go. I ended up going there, and my parents had always said, well, if the theater thing doesn't work out, just know when you're 21 years old, you should really go to med school, or like apply to medical, go to law school. I ended up, very luckily, I was at Carnegie Mellon, and my first Broadway show was right when I graduated. I was in the ensemble of Flower Drum Song on Broadway, starring Lea Salonga. And I was in the ensemble dancing, but I was also understudying the lead character played by Jose Lana, who's also part of our Rent family. He was also an angel as well on Broadway before he did Flower Drum Song. The next Broadway show I did was a show called Pacific Overtures, which was actually a Stephen Sondheim musical. I got to work with Stephen Sondheim. I also got to work with an amazing director from Japan. His name is Amon Miyamoto. And that was the first time, believe it or not, in 2004 was the first time a musical was directed by an Asian person on Broadway. So I was so proud to be in that all-Asian cast, and also so proud to be in a show that was for him. And Stephen Sondheim even said, when he wrote Pacific Overtures and he created that show with Hal Prince and with John Weidman, they always wanted to write the Japanese story through a Japanese perspective. So they, in the 70s when they did that show, they told it through kabuki theater styles. Well, they said, but we're three white men trying to tell this Japanese story using a Japanese theater medium. Then in 2004, they hired a Japanese director. They said, this is our vision. This is how It took 30 plus years for us to complete what it is that we artistically wanted to do, but we said we have to bring this director from Japan. And it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to be a part of that. Now, both of those first Broadway shows, I was in the cast, I was in the ensemble, and I understudied in all of those shows, right? Those shows also only ran 3 or 4 months on Broadway. So every time one of those shows closed, my parents would say to me, okay, are you done? Broadway done? Are you playtime over? Are you going to go be a doctor now? Every time. And, you know, it took them a long time for them to stop asking. Every time a show would close or a job would end, they go, okay, are you done? You know, every time. And luckily, sometimes I would go, am I done? I don't know. Like, do I keep doing this? And then I would audition for something else. I would get another job. Well, it just so happened I was doing Pacific Overtures, and the show that happened before Pacific Overtures was a show called Assassins. It was directed by Joe Mantello. Joe Mantello is the director of Wicked. And so what ended up happening was, because he saw me doing Pacific Overtures, he hired me to open the Chicago company of Wicked, playing Bach there. And it was that was one of those experiences I learned a big lesson, which is that you never know when you're auditioning. You know, I didn't know that he was watching me in a show about, you know, Japan. You know, I was doing the Stephen Sondheim show, which is so different than Wicked, and my performance in that show, I had no idea he was in the audience, and that basically was my audition for the next show. And it was a really valuable lesson that every time, you know, even when you go to an audition and you feel like, oh, I didn't get the job, but guess what? If you make a good impression and you make those people feel something in that audition, you might not be right for that show, but those people will remember you in their brain. They will remember you in their heart. They'll remember how you made them feel. And when there is the right show and you audition for those people again, they'll remember that. So I would say, if there's any advice I give any young people that go to auditions, just know that you could be auditioning for that show, and sometimes you don't get that job, but you might be auditioning for the next one. So just keep putting your heart out there. Keep putting your best self as an artist out there. Every opportunity you get, you never know. There could be 3 people in that audience. You never know who's watching. So just give of yourself and relish that opportunity to perform for whoever it is, right? And then doing Wicked, I did Wicked in Chicago. And when I came back from Wicked, I did a small production of Godspell that was at a theater called the Paper Mill Theater, right outside of New York City. And my dressing roommate was an actor named Robin de Jesus. You guys might know Robin because he was in Camp. He was also nominated for the Tony in The Heights. And this was right before he did In the Heights. And he said, hey, Telly, I'm leaving Rent because I'm going to go do this new rap musical called In the Heights. This guy named Lin-Manuel Miranda, nobody's ever heard of him. He wrote this show, but I'm about to go and do this new show. So they need an angel understudy at Rent. You should go. So then I went to that audition. And it was because Robin said, you should go. My dressing roommate from doing Godspell said, you should go and audition. And when I was at Rent, first of all, Rent was the show at 16 years old that made me want to do theater. Rent came out in 1996. I was a junior in high school. And it was the show that was, if you didn't like Broadway before Rent, you liked Rent, and Rent was what made you come explore the theater. Rent was on the cover of every magazines. I cut class to buy the 2 CD album. I can talk about it now, but I cut class to go to JNR Records downtown, stand in a line, and get my cast album for Rent. I was one of those Rent heads that would sleep outside the theater for a $20 rush ticket. I saw Rent the summer of '97. I think I saw it like 14 times. So I remember auditioning for the show, you know, with Michael Greif, with Tim Weil, and going and performing. I sang Will I sang all the angel material. And basically that audition, I just said, I'm just going to have fun because I've dreamed of doing this show for 10 years of my life. And when I did get the show, they gave me 3 weeks to learn the show, to learn my track in the show, which was Steve and others, and also to learn all the angel stuff. I learned everything in 1 week. And our stage manager, Crystal, said, are you sure you've never done this show before? And I said, I've been doing the show in my brain and in my heart for the last 10 years. So being a part of that show was a full circle moment for me, from that kid that's sitting in the front row with a $20 seat to then standing up on stage singing Seasons of Love. And I remember there was one night I sang Seasons of Love, and it's the only moment that everybody sort of turns and sings it to an audience, right? I looked down at that $20 seat where I sat in 10 years ago, and there was a kid. There was somebody that was high school age looking up at me, like just like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like the luckiest artist in the world to get to be in that show that made me want to do theater. And that's going to be, for your generation, it's probably Wicked or Hamilton, these shows that are still around, that show that where you play the cast recording over and over again and you couldn't stop. I was that theater nerd that then got to be the theater person, But when I was doing Rent and understudying in that show, I remember my first show, Honest Angel, was terrible. And it was because our wonderful resident director and Michael Greif, our director, said to me, they're like, I don't understand. Where are you in this show? And I said, well, I'm understudying. I'm just filling in for the night, right? Like I'm just here to like make sure the show keeps going. So I was trying to do the actor I was understudying, his name is Justin. I was trying to do Justin's show. They said, no. They said, Rent is a different Broadway show. Rent is tables, chairs, lights. This, like Marlies said, the set doesn't change. The thing that draws people to Rent, that makes people connect, is you. If you don't bring yourself to it, if you are anything but yourself, if you're anything but authentic, the audience will see it, they will smell it, and it doesn't work. So the whole show is about this ensemble of actors bringing their whole selves to this and connecting with other people. And here's the thing. This was my third Broadway show, and I was still learning lessons. So just when you think, oh, I'm a Broadway actor, I'm a professional, I've learned everything, absolutely not. On my third Broadway show, I was still learning, and I still learn today. I still consider myself a student of the theater today. I still take class, I still take voice lessons, but boy, did I learn a big lesson on Rent about how to really connect with people, how to be your own artist. And I was also lucky that the people that created Rent, like Marlies, like Michael, like Jonathan, they encouraged us. You don't get that on every show, but on Rent, it was not only was it encouraged, it was necessary for the show to work. And I think doing that show made me a better artist. It made me more brave. It was scary to bring my interpretation to it, because I think there's a part of me from the math and science world that was so scared of being wrong. In math and science, there's a right and wrong answer. In art, there's no right or wrong, right? There just isn't. So it's only wrong if it's fake, I say, and when you can feel it's not real and authentic. So the more authentic and the more you can be, the better. While I was doing Rent, I was workshopping a brand new show called Allegiance, which was a musical about the Japanese-American internment. It was inspired by the life of George Takei. He was one of the original members of Star Trek, the legendary TV show Star Trek. And while I was doing Rent at night, I would be doing readings and workshops of this other show. And this show was like, who knows if this show will ever go to Broadway? Who knows? So I was workshopping that show, and then all of a sudden, this little Godspell show was also moving to Broadway. They said the little show that I thought at Paper Mill, we were only going to do it for 2 months and that was it. Well, apparently Stephen Schwartz liked it so much, he said, this is the production that we're going to bring to Broadway in 2011. So then I ended up doing the revival of Godspell in that time. All during that time, I was also auditioning for TV and film things. And they said, hey, on Glee, they said, we're looking for a group of boys who look like prep school boys in season 2 of Glee. So in my living room, I made a tape just like this with a ring light. I made a tape. I auditioned for the show. And then they said, hey, you got the show. No idea that it would be Glee, right? The show, again, I just thought, oh, great, it'll be a great job to do in Los Angeles. I'll fly to Los Angeles, I'll shoot the show. They said, hey, these boys, you're probably going to only be on like 2 or 3 episodes. We're going to introduce this character, Darren Chris's character, and then you guys will be done. What ended up happening was the Glee fans loved the Warblers so much that they just kept writing for us. So here I was in New York City doing theater all the time. All of a sudden, my phone would ring. They go, hey, they wrote you in on Glee again. Can you go back? So then you would go, get on a plane, go to Los Angeles, shoot Glee, fly back, go. I don't know if they're going to write for us again. Do some more theater in New York, do some more readings and workshops of new shows. And then, sometimes your phone would ring and you fly to LA again, which was sort of a crazy, crazy experience. Um, and in all of that time, I was also touring with Rent too, because the two original stars of Rent, Adam Pascal and Anthony Rapp, they went on tour. And again, one of these things where I went, oh my gosh, a wonderful opportunity to be on tour, to tour with my Rent family, to do the show that I love to do. We toured the entire nation, and we also went to Japan for a month. And we also went to Seoul, Korea for a month. And this was when I understood not the real power of theater, which is that it's international. It doesn't matter that we don't speak the same language. It doesn't matter that I'm in New York and you guys are in Brazil. Music is music. A good story is a good story. And when the story is as good and when the music is as good as Rent, like it, we were in Japan. None of those people, that audience didn't speak English. We were doing the show in English with Japanese subtitles, and they cried in exactly the same places. They laughed in all the same places. And it was really such a powerful exchange of to be with theater fans. Again, I'm a theater maker, but I'm a big theater fan. I was meeting Japanese people that love theater just as much as I did, that love that show just as much as I did. And it was such a rewarding experience. Since then, I've been to Japan a lot to perform, and any opportunity I get to meet other international theater artists, I take that opportunity, which is why I'm really happy to be here with all of you in Brazil. This is like, it's so exciting because I get to now meet artists from another part of the world who love what I love, so it's awesome. And it makes the world just a little smaller. And really, I think isn't that what theater is all about, right? That at the end of the day, I think what theater does is it brings people together and it makes us all feel like we are not so alone. And even though we're all living in a time right now where it's very easy to feel alone because we are locked down and this virus has made it that we have to isolate from one another, that the power of theater, the power of a good story, it reminds us that we are, at the end of the day, all human, that we all connect, we all cry, we all feel the same things. We don't speak the same language, we don't have the same governments, but we are still human. And that is why I think when you hear things like No Day But Today, when you hear Seasons of Love, even songs like You Will Be Found from Dear Evan Hansen, when You Are Not Alone from Into the Woods, they all have something in common. It's just that it reminds us that we are not as far apart as we really are. So anyway, that's sort of my story, and I'm really thrilled to be here. Just happy to be here.
Muito obrigada, Telly. Telly, Marlies, muito obrigada para compartilhando suas histórias e motivações. Vamos agora para as perguntas. Recebemos várias já aqui no chat. Nós temos quase 20. Então, vamos começar. E nós temos perguntas em português e em inglês também. Ok, uma pergunta para as dois, do João Medeiros. É necessário ter feito faculdade em teatro ou teatro musical, ou cursos específicos bastam?
No, you don't, to have a career. I did not have a degree, but what I did was I stayed in the home of the college to learn as much as I could learn before I stepped out in the world. Well, that's not exactly true. I was actually stepping out in the world while I was in college. And it was actually the director of the dance department, because I too, Telly, started off in science. I started off in biological sciences, thinking that a science career would be safe and I would do my dance as a hobby. And then I wound up taking a dance class for recreation. And next thing I knew, I had all dance classes. And the next thing I knew, I was doing all choreography and production. So get the information from where you can get the information. College is important. It does create a home. Is it necessary for you to be an artist? What's necessary is your ability to organize yourself, commit, hone and understand your talent, and continue to learn. So whether you're always going to be studying, you're always going to be taking classes. Even for me, as on the creative side, I am always seeking new information and how it informs my craft. So you will always be taking in study. There is no end to that. If you want to teach, either your my credits and what I've done over my lifetime, I've been in programs where they've offered me to be on a tenure track to teach. However, if you're wanting to teach in academia, the work, it's a good, solid thing to have that degree. It does, and especially the program that you're in, does give you good information to move you into different things. But being in the world and seeing artistry in the world and taking classes from professionals, there's nothing better than that.
I agree with Marlies. There is no one path to doing this. And everybody's journey as an artist is very different. And I think after hearing Marlies' story and also my story, you can see what life throws things at you that are unexpected. Life throws opportunities at you that are unexpected. And if college and the university of studying theater is something that is an opportunity that is presented to you, and you have the means to do that, great. If that is what in that moment you want to embrace and accept, great. Everybody's life is so different, and what they're able to do is so different that, you know, that might not be your path. I have a very dear friend who's now done 10 Broadway shows. She went to Harvard and she graduated with honors in bioscience. And then when she graduated, she went to a random audition for Cats. And she's never 10 Broadway shows later, she's like still, you know, that's just her path. And then some people go to college and they study it. Some people, you know, and some people, I have friends who I went to Carnegie Mellon, again, is a wonderful acting school. Her path, she studied musical theater. Now she uses theater to work with autistic children. And that so her path was that she had to study her goal, she thought at 20 years old, was to be on Broadway and to perform. Her path took her to now doing this really meaningful work. And so she's able to look back on that and go, I was supposed to study that to then help these kids.
Ótimo. E para aproveitar este tópico, o Felipe também gostaria de saber se vocês têm dicas para pessoas buscando bolsas de musical theater em universidades dos Estados Unidos. E vou combinar com uma pergunta de Gláucia. Se tem uma diferença na formação em teatro musical e na de teatro nos Estados Unidos?
Here's the thing about, I advise anybody, especially because I came from a family that didn't have a ton of money to be able to afford to go to a private university. So I was very open and honest with, when I auditioned, I said, this school is too expensive and I can't go. I'm going to audition anyway. And some programs, it doesn't hurt for you to say that, you know, when you audition, to just go, I would love to go here. I'm going to give it my best. This is who I am as an artist. I hope that I am of value to your artistic community, but I can't afford this, right? And it just so happened that my school, Carnegie Mellon, was able to find ways for me to be able to go. I took student loans. I had a couple of scholarships and grants. I also studied a lot when I was there. I was also, I would like take class and then, you had jobs at the university where you could earn a little bit of money. So they were able to figure out a way to help. But, you know, I think when it comes to needing help, I think it's hard for me as a person. It's hard for me to ask for help. Sometimes I feel too prideful or too ashamed to ask for help. I have found that every time I've asked for help, the universe has delivered in some way, in a positive way. And it starts with me going, I need help, you know? It starts with just being able to say that and being at peace with that, and admitting that sometimes, you know? So I would say be honest with that. And as far as acting or musical theater, every musical theater program is different. Every acting program is different. Every university shapes their program very differently. So Carnegie Mellon's program is very acting-centric. It is, you know, it's rooted in Shakespeare and Chekhov, and the music theater students do all of that. If you went to Carnegie Mellon, you couldn't tell those actors apart, right? There are some musical theater programs that are very dance-heavy, that, like, you know, those that are rooted in dance departments. There are some musical theater programs that are very music-heavy and really rooted in singing. So you have to just find sort of what's good for you, how you enter it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And what your interest is. And I think that's what really Telly is saying there, is what is your interest with the theater? There is definitely, I would say, like Telly is suggesting, train in everything, because now traditional musical theater form is sometimes gets in the way in a production like In the Heights or Rent or even Hamilton, or on and on and on and on. That form is now been stretched. So you want to be able to have a strong acting base that comes as well from your story, combining with the story that you are telling through your body, through your voice. And then to train that voice, not only to train it to sing legit theater, but also to train it to sing some rock or some R&B or some soul. So to really stretch your range, both in terms of the music that you're connecting to and the theatrical base that you're connecting to, and the same thing to your dancing body. Go and take different forms of dance. So now where theater is at and the different forms of theater that you see, both in the musical form and even with music joining in the stage theatrical form that is not quite music, but yet it's musical theater, but yet it is using and embodying music to tell the story, but still very different. You want all the passageways open to you so that you can build a career around it. You want to be able to be a full-time artist if you can, if that's what you really want to do. So yes, practice and stretch in every direction.
Muito bom. A Amanda mandou uma pergunta em inglês, que é também a mesma pergunta do Pedro, da Sara e da Beatriz. Can Brazilian actors make it in America and Broadway? If so, what should they do? What are the chances?
I missed the first half of the question. Can you repeat it?
No worries. Can Brazilian actors make it in America and Broadway? If so, what should we do and what are the chances?
The possibilities of anything are always there. You have to be willing to risk it and trust yourself. One, it would be important to learn English. If you don't have English as a language, you would want to make sure you have that. And then I would think that you have to trust your instincts. Wouldn't you say, Telly? I would say it really would depend on you on so many levels.
Broadway is hard. It is a competitive field, and there's everybody wants. It's something that everybody wants to do, and it's a dream for so many people. And when you come to New York, you sort of realize you're like, oh, everybody's talented. Everybody's really good. Everybody's you know what I mean? And so I think it's so much about the right person and the right talent at the right time and the right opportunity that comes up. And of course, yes, it would be amazing to have more Brazilian artists on Broadway. I think it would be awesome to work with Brazilian artists on Broadway. For me, it would be so rewarding, because then it would open up my world, and I would be able to learn from you all and include you in my new theater family. But it's yes, there are definitely the challenges. There are language challenges, of course, and of course also just also all of the technical immigration challenges too, of visas and paperwork and all of that. That's difficult too. That's difficult for even our friends who are Canadians. I've written so many letters for friends who are for artist visas and all of that. So that's also a challenge as well. But if you are willing to put in all of that time and energy and work and resources into doing it, that means you really want it. So I'm sure it'll happen.
And it might also be about not necessarily immediately going to Broadway. I mean, when you hear about the story that Telly is sharing, and even my own story, I was actually a person who was not hailing to go to Broadway. My world was just a very different world. I was in the contemporary dance and theater environment. It would be considered more the off-Broadway or off-Broadway even. But it was authentic to me, and I wanted to really do it. So you have to decide, what can't you do without in your life? At one point, I realized I could not do without being an artist. That I dreamed at night, the dancing bodies would go through my head. If I listen to music, I'm dreaming that dance. So it's really to understand who are you and what you really want to do, and then instinctually following that path, because the opportunities can come from any direction at any time. At that time that I discovered Rent and Rent discovered me, I was not looking for Rent. It happened in that moment, and it was life altering. So follow your instinct. It's when I say that, I don't say that lightly. As an artist, you have to follow your instinct. What are you dreaming? What makes you salivate when you see it? What makes you really wake up inside? There has to be a passion for it, because Telly is right in that it is a huge sacrifice going into it. For some, it's like no sacrifice, immediate, it just happened. And then for others, you work years and years and years, and it may never happen. Or you work years and years and years, and in one moment you turn the corner from doing this little thing that you didn't think much of, and then suddenly it has become a big thing. You don't know that. But what keeps you going is your honest connection to really loving and wanting to do it.
I had a wonderful teacher in college, an acting teacher who shared something with me that I always take with me. And now I'm a teacher too. I teach at NYU. I teach musical theater at NYU with someone from our Rent family, Michael McElroy. He teaches with us too. He's the head of that program. And my teacher said to me, it's about process, not result. So on your, if your dream is to be on Broadway, and that is that your process of you fighting for that dream, the people that you're going to meet along the way of getting to that dream, whether you get it or not, whether you actually get that Broadway show or not, right? The process of you fighting for that, getting what you want, the people you meet, the other artists you meet, how you grow as a performer, how you grow as an artist and a human being, that's what you're going to walk away with. Because Broadway shows, they open and close. A Broadway show is a job, and a Broadway show is a wonderful achievement, but that also ends, right? Like the people you meet along the way, the connections, the people you affect as an artist, all the other shows and other things you do as a human being, as an artist that lead you up to that actually makes for a meaningful experience, so that by the time you do get that Broadway show or don't get that Broadway show, you still have all of that experience behind you. So it's, if you can shift your thinking of going, yes, I have a goal, that would be my dream, I want that, but it's about the process of getting that. It makes it so that every moment is meaningful.
Infelizmente, nosso tempo está acabando e ainda temos muitas perguntas. Então, vamos caminhar para a última pergunta e encaminhar as demais para Marlies e Telly e mandamos por e-mail para vocês, tá? Então, a última é uma pergunta do Wilton e do Felipe e da Kelly. Uma pessoa que começou a fazer dança depois de adulto consegue seguir a carreira no teatro musical? E também, qual o conselho de vocês para pessoas que começaram mais tarde e têm uma desvantagem em atuação e dança?
You want to go first, Telly?
I've done 7 Broadway shows, like I said. My first ballet class ever was in college. First time I took a ballet class. I sometimes would take like a hip hop class at Broadway Dance Center for fun or something, but like I never was a dancer. And it was something that I was not good at in college. So there was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I said, you know what? I'm not a good dancer. I got to take my butt to dance class and like really work on that. And then I had no idea that my first Broadway show I would ever get hired to do, which was Flower Drum Saw, was dancing in the ensemble and being an understudy. Because I came to it as an actor and as a singer. Dancing was the last thing, but it was also something that I recognized in myself as a student. I have to work on that. I have to get better at that. And I will probably never be as good enough of a dancer to dance at the New York City Ballet, but the working on it, the going, okay, I got to go to class and be bad and fall out of turns and like, and not get the combination. The process of that gave me confidence so that, every class I took where I was not good gave me a little more confidence when I had to go to an audition and actually dance, even though it was the thing that made me uncomfortable. So I would say, yes, it is. I would say what Marlies had said before too, which is keep working. You know, you sort of have to keep learning at all times and going, yeah, I really, that thing I'm not so good at, maybe I should spend some time there. It's the thing that scares me the most. Well, if it scares you the most, you know, that probably means it's good for you as an artist to dive in and gain and let it be not so scary.
Definitely, and I would agree with you, Telly, on the same page with that. And then I would say that then there's situations where you just have raw talent and you step into that light and somebody sees you for who you are and they want to make something for you or want to bring you into production. So again, trusting yourself, but taking the chance, because if you are sitting back and you're thinking to yourself, am I too old? I have this love for this thing. And is it too late for me to start? Oh, I shouldn't start. I should just stay safe where I'm at. That's not a life well lived. And one of the things that Telly was sharing when he was talking about how the coming together and the life, the journey, the process, being that it is feeding your life and memories and connections that you'll have that you would have never had. Think about that. If you've never stepped in front of your own spotlight to try, you will leave this earth having never tried, and it will sit with you. It sat with my mother. My mother was an amazing singer and dancer. She was an interpretive dancer. And she did that throughout her life. And one day when I saw myself improvising, I realized I was dancing my mother's feet. Yeah. So, and then one day she stopped to have us, which I'm thankful, because otherwise I wouldn't be here, you know? But I saw also a sadness in her as she wasn't able or did not choose, or I don't know what it was, because it really wasn't my father stopping her, but somewhere along the way, she said to herself no in her artistry. And I know that it was hard for her. So I would say, if you have an inclination, go and try. And every audition, take it as a class, a free class. Take away the information, you know, and go, like Telly says, if you're getting the same feedback again and again and again, something in the voice, something in the body, then go and work on that. It does not matter your age. Go and work on that, because it's about your life being lived to its fullest. Yeah.
Ótimo. Estamos chegando ao final de nosso bate-papo, mas antes de encerrarmos, colocamos no chat link para uma pesquisa bem rápida e agradecemos se puderem responder. Enquanto isso, agradeço novamente toda a equipe da TV Cultura e nossos convidados especiais, Marlies Yearby e Telly Leung. Thank you so much for your participation. Would you like to say a few quick words before we close?
Well, I'm so honored to be here, Madalena, and thank you so much for hosting us and the TV show. I love that you all are bringing this forum together in this way, and I've always wanted to travel to Brazil, and to Sao Paulo actually is where I want to go, and Bahia. So it's just beautiful to be able to be here with you in this way, virtually. I feel like I'm home, having a moment with you in Brazil. Thank you. Thank you.
The last thing I want to wish you is all joy and health. First of all, I wish health and for all of you and your families. You know, this is a rough time for artists and for theater people, especially because we gather people. This is what we do, is we gather people together. And right now it's just not a healthy and a safe thing for us to be able to do. But it doesn't mean we stop making music. It doesn't mean we stop telling stories. It doesn't mean we stop learning from one another as artists. If anything, that connection is more important. So I encourage all of you, the next generation of artists, to go and find different ways to connect. It doesn't matter where you're connecting. It doesn't matter where you're telling that story, making people laugh, giving joy. It could be on Instagram. It could be on TikTok. It could be on YouTube. It could be on Zoom. Find a way to keep telling stories and keep making music. And then when the theater is back, it'll be back and we'll all be together.
Beautiful. Yes.
Agradeço também a presença de cada um de vocês e espero que tenham gostado. Desejo muito sucesso e estou muito ansiosa para vê-los brilhar pelos palcos do Brasil e do mundo. Mantenham contato conosco através de nossas páginas do Facebook e Instagram, Consulado EUASP. Lá compartilhamos oportunidades de intercâmbio, inclusive alguns específicos para artistas, e também informações sobre eventos, financiamento de projetos e assuntos diversos. Muito obrigada mais uma vez para seus talentos. Boa tarde e até a próxima. Tchau. Tchau, gente.